Hello everyone, this is Manoj Pathak and I welcome you all to the CareerWheel platform to study geography with me. We are talking about geography optional and in last lecture I was talking about jet streams, and in that discussion we had seen the definition part of jet stream and we had decided that we'll follow a proper framework in order to complete jet stream in toto, so that you can understand each and everything related to jet stream. Plus you must be in a position, you should be in a position to write very good answers to score good marks in your mains exam. So in this discussion we had seen how we came to know about the jet streams, and in that discussion only I talked about some of the terms that are associated with jet streams that are important. And the other thing that we had discussed is the importance of jet stream. It is very evident that these jet streams influence a lot many things that we see. Weather phenomena are affected by these jet streams. They are responsible for establishing climate at many areas of the world. We also had a brief discussion about one of the concepts, that is pressure gradient force, and in that lecture only I had told all of you that we need to understand these basic concepts in order to admire the concept of jet stream. So I'll again want to make sure that you remember the flow that will be following. After this, today I'll start with the discussion over Coriolis force. I'll be talking about geostrophic winds so that it makes things easier to deal with these jet streams. And after understanding the jet streams, we'll derive some of the characteristics that we can associate with jet streams. Then we'll look at the life cycle of jet streams that we call as index cycle of jet stream. Then we'll be looking at the classification part, and then I'll move to some of the recent events, weather events that were associated with jet stream and were in news. After covering all these things, we'll be looking at some of the questions that were asked previously in UPSC, so that whenever you find a question in exam hall, it becomes very easy for you to write those answers. After all, we know that writing these answers will get us that coveted job of IAS. You can only become administrative officer if you score well marks in your mains exam. So we'll be doing that. So without wasting more time, I'll start with the concept that is important for understanding the jet streams. Okay, so we'll be looking at these concepts. So if I talk about the pressure gradient force that we had discussed, we had seen this example, how pressure gradient force behaves, right? High pressure to low pressure, it moves. And for that thing, we had taken an example where I had given you a glimpse how the air above land gets more heated, okay? And the ocean, the temperature over ocean is not that high, and because of this thing, what happens, there is low pressure created over the land mass and there is high pressure comparatively over the ocean, and hence this moves, the wind moves from high pressure to low pressure. The difference, this gradient moves the air from high pressure to low pressure. So whenever this term again appears, the pressure gradient force, the only thing that you need to remember is that it's always moving from high pressure to low pressure. Now, I'll take you forward with the other thing that we had discussed. Whenever there is a strong gradient, the speed of the wind will be very high. And when there will be weak gradient, then we'll see slow speed of the winds. These concepts are important. You need to remember that. And after pressure gradient force, the other thing which is very, very important and will definitely appear in all the topics of climatology is Coriolis force. Now we'll be discussing the concept of Coriolis force. Okay, the Coriolis force. So this is an imaginary force. It is not an actual force. This is imaginary force used to account for the deflection, for the curved path of objects. And when we are talking about the climatology, we'll be considering wind as that object. Okay, so what I have said, that it is an imaginary force. Imaginary force. So you must have heard the term Coriolis effect. Sometimes it is described only as an effect in order to ensure that you do not get confused by the term force. Because when we use the term force, it occurs to us, it appears to us that some force is doing this work. But it is not like that. And we'll try to understand this thing only, what this Coriolis effect is. It is an imaginary force and it explains the curved path of moving objects. Okay, and we know that the wind is moving. Whenever the air is moving, we call it as wind. So I'll take an example through which you can understand what exactly this Coriolis effect is. Okay, so let's take an example of two children playing over this platform that is circular. Okay, so this is your platform, and here two children are playing. Okay, two children are playing with a ball and they are throwing the ball here to here. Okay, so whenever this child is throwing the ball to the next child, when he sees the movement of the ball, it appears to him that it is moving in the straight direction, as the platform on which they are sitting is static. It is not moving. Let's take another scenario where this platform over which these two children are sitting is moving. Okay, it is rotating like our earth rotates. So it is important that you understand this concept when the platform is rotating. Okay, now this platform is rotating and again these children are playing the same thing. He is throwing the ball, and as we know that this will move in a straight line. The ball will move in a straight line. But as this platform is moving, what will happen? The position of the boy will change when he will leave this ball. He'll throw this ball. By this time, this child will be here and his position will be somewhat here. But what will happen? He will feel like I have thrown the ball from this place only, because he is sitting there and he has thrown. So the path will look like this to him. The ball will reach the same place after throwing. But what would appear to this guy is like the ball has taken a curved path. Taken a curved path. You can correlate to this with your own experiences as well. If you remember when you were traveling by a car, maybe a train or in a bus, and when you are moving through a curved path and some other road is there where a vehicle is moving straight, it occurs to us, it must have occurred to you that the other vehicle is not moving straight, and this is that vision of curved path which has its genesis in this Coriolis effect. So what actually happens with Earth? Now let's see what happens on our Earth when the wind is moving. This is our Earth, and if an object is here, or let's say if wind starts moving from this place, so whenever it is moving in the northern hemisphere, whenever the wind is moving in the northern hemisphere, it occurs to us that it is deflecting towards right, deflecting to right direction. And when the wind is moving in the southern hemisphere, it appears that it is deflecting to left in the southern hemisphere. This is your southern hemisphere. So this effect, this imaginary path that actually occurs to us is called as Coriolis effect. As the earth is rotating, when the wind starts moving from an area, okay, going outside, the earth is rotating. So what happens? The place where it is approaching is moving somewhere else, and hence in order to reach that place, what happens? The wind takes a curved path. So this is your Coriolis force or Coriolis effect. But one thing that you need to remember is that this force is not affecting the speed of the wind. This Coriolis force is concerned with Coriolis force affects the direction of the wind. It affects the direction of wind. It doesn't affect the speed. Okay? It doesn't affect the speed. It only affects the direction. That you need to remember that Coriolis force is responsible for the direction of the wind. It is not responsible for the speed of wind. Okay? Now, if we look into the relationship of this Coriolis effect with pressure gradient force, then you must remember that Coriolis force and pressure gradient force are perpendicular to each other. Pressure gradient force is perpendicular to Coriolis force. Okay, this is perpendicular. So if the Coriolis force, let's say this is pressure gradient force, this is from high to low. So if we have to tell whether what will be the direction of the Coriolis force, then it will be perpendicular. This is your CF. Coriolis force will be perpendicular, and we know that in the northern hemisphere it will be traveling to the right direction, and in the southern hemisphere to the left direction. So this relationship is important. One more small concept that you must have read in school is, let's say some object is moving from here to here, okay, A to B, and it takes, let's say, t time. Time is t. So what will happen if all the things remain same, and if it has to take a curved path without changing this time, then what will happen? The speed will have to increase. The speed will increase. The speed increases in order to reach this place in the same time. So this is what exactly happens with the wind as well. When the wind is taking the curved path instead of a straight path, we see that the speed increases. So you have to remember this simple law of physics as well in order to understand jet streams better. And if you have understood all these things, now it is time that I bring one more important concept to you so that you can admire the whole jet stream with a great understanding. So we'll be talking about our third important concept, that is geostrophic winds. Geostrophic wind. This is also very important concept. Why? Because as I had already told you, jet streams are sometimes also called as geostrophic wind. So what exactly is this geostrophic wind? So basically geostrophic wind is a theoretical concept. We do not find exact geostrophic wind. So what it is? This is geostrophic wind is basically a theoretical concept. Theoretical concept. And what it says, that whenever there is geostrophic flow or geostrophic wind is flowing, then there is going to be a perfect balance between the Coriolis force and pressure gradient force. What it says, that this wind blows when there is perfect balance between Coriolis force and pressure gradient force. Now what does it mean? The perfect balance means what? We have seen just a minute ago what we have seen, that high to low movement of the wind because of the pressure gradient force. If this is PGF, then the Coriolis force will be either like this or like this, right? It will be perpendicular. Either you are considering it to be in the northern hemisphere or southern hemisphere. The situation has to be like this. But what happens in a scenario when the geostrophic flow is there? The scenario changes. What happens? That instead of being perpendicular to each other, they align each other. It means that for geostrophic wind, if the Coriolis force is acting this way, then your pressure gradient force will be acting exactly opposite, and this will be the wind direction from high to low. So this scenario is referred to as geostrophic wind. Geostrophic flow or geostrophic wind. So let us see how jet streams behave. What exactly happens that instead of being perpendicular to each other, these two things move in opposite direction. So I'll try and explain by taking the movement of the wind in the northern hemisphere. Okay, I'm taking an example by taking the movement. Let's say this is your pressure gradient force and this is your northern hemisphere. So let us consider that here the wind starts. Okay, if the wind starts here, so what we know, this is the direction of pressure gradient force that is acting, plus the wind is moving from high to low pressure. This is high pressure and this is low pressure. So your Coriolis force is acting here. But now only what we had seen, that in northern hemisphere there is a tendency of the wind to deflect to the right because of the Coriolis force. As this Coriolis force is acting perpendicular to this wind, what will happen? This will impact its movement. So it deflects here, and this is your direction of pressure gradient force. So as it moves ahead, takes a curved path, so the speed increases. As the speed increases, it deflects further. Okay, and finally what happens? This is your wind deflecting, and at the start only we have seen that the pressure gradient force was acting straight. So this is your PGF, and here in the upper troposphere, what happens? We get this geostrophic flow. We reach the geostrophic flow in the upper troposphere. Okay, as the wind moves, it finally turns into geostrophic flow as it achieves an exact balance between the Coriolis force and pressure gradient force. Okay, so this is the concept of geostrophic wind. But I must also tell you that these conditions cannot be actually achieved on the surface of the earth. Nearby surface we cannot achieve this thing because the resistance of movement is there. There is some resistance which will never ever allow to reach this stage. But in the upper troposphere, around tropopause, sometimes we find this scenario because there is no resistance to the movement of the wind. There is no resistance, and hence we achieve geostrophic flow. Okay, so we achieve geostrophic flow in the upper layers of the atmosphere. Okay, not near ground surface, around tropopause, where we can see this thing happening, tropopause. But this is, like I said, the concept is theoretical, so rarely we achieve a perfect balance, but nearly perfect things are seen in the upper troposphere, tropopause, around tropopause. Okay, so you need to remember this thing, and as we have understood this thing, it is time that we move ahead with our discussion and we try to understand the real topic, jet streams. So we have understood some of the concepts that are important to easily understand the movement of jet streams. Okay, so basically what happens? How these jet streams are formed. Okay, so basically jet stream is a wind. So what will happen? The minimum basic criteria is that the wind should move, and when we know that the wind will only move if there is pressure gradient or maybe thermal gradient, right? And this scenario occurs when two different air masses meet who have different temperatures. So basically jet streams develop. The jet streams develop when two contrasting air masses meet each other. So the jet streams will form in an area when two different air masses, the temperature conditions are different, they meet each other, then we see the formation of these jet streams. When I'll be talking about the different type of jet streams, then I'll show which jet stream is forming where and because of which air masses. Okay, the mass of the air, will be discussing that. And if we talk about the conditions which are important for the formation of the jet stream, then we have to focus on three kinds of gradients. Three kinds of gradients that lead to formation of these jet streams. Okay, the temperature difference, the pressure difference. Okay, these three kind of gradients. So these are formed, like we had seen the example for northern hemisphere, the temperature contrast between the the equator and the pole. So the first condition is thermal gradient between the pole and equator. The thermal gradient between the equator and the pole. Okay, the second condition is pressure gradient. Pressure gradient between the equator and the pole. So basically the temperature difference between the equator and the pole, the pressure difference between the equator and the pole leads to formation of the jet streams. And along with this, the third gradient that we have to consider is the pressure gradient which is created between the surface and subsurface air. Okay, the pressure gradient between the pressure gradient between the surface and subsurface air as all of us know that the temperature that we feel on our Earth's surface is always more than that we feel in the upper layers, because this heating takes place from beneath the surface. The heating starts from the surface of the earth. So always the air which is nearby the earth will be hotter as compared to the air which is far from the surface. So this pressure difference that is created between these two layers, the surface and subsurface, will also impact the formation of the jet streams. All these things you need to remember. Whenever you are writing an answer, you will be required to write these things. And Of course, we have understood these pressure gradient. So we have seen the things which are required for the formation of jet streams, the very conditions which are important for the formation of jet streams. So in next lecture, what we are going to do, we'll understand how the jet stream is actually formed and how it traverses through the whole world, how we see these jet streams as ribbons of strong winds, what conditions prevail in the upper tropopause which leads to formation of such big, massive jet streams. So be ready for the next lecture, where in next lecture we'll try and make sure that we complete each and every aspect, so that in our fourth lecture we'll be dealing with some of the questions and you'll discover that you can write any of the answers based on the things that we discuss in the class. Thank you.